That night, the desert felt alive. The wind howled through the dunes, kicking up fine grains of sand that bit into my skin like tiny shards of glass. The air was thick with the smell of burning oil, a scent that would cling to my uniform for days. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbled, a deep, steady sound that rattled through my bones. I had been in the First Gulf War for only a few weeks, but it felt like a lifetime. The things I had already seen, things I could never unsee. But nothing could have prepared me for what was coming next. I was just a soldier, another name in the long list of men sent into this war. I wasn't a hero, I wasn't special. I was just doing my job. My squad and I had been ordered to push forward into enemy territory, securing a route that had been marked as high risk. Intelligence reports said the area had been abandoned by enemy forces, but I had learned quickly not to trust everything we were told. War doesn't follow a script. War is chaos. And that night chaos found us. The radio crackled with static as our convoy rolled through the darkness. We were moving slow, headlights off, our eyes straining through the green glow of night vision goggles. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Every shape in the sand felt like a trap waiting to spring. My hands tightened around my rifle, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. Then the silence broke. A voice came through the radio, urgent and sharp. "We've got movement up ahead. Unidentified. Hold position." I swallowed hard, scanning the horizon. The desert stretched out in all directions, endless and unforgiving. But then I saw it, a flicker of motion in the distance, just beyond the wreckage of a burned-out vehicle. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. We had all seen death by then. We had all walked through the aftermath of battle, stepping carefully over the wreckage of war. But this wasn't like anything I had seen before. The figures ahead weren't moving like soldiers. They were stumbling, jerking, their movements unnatural. It was as if they were being pulled forward by something unseen, something they couldn't control. "Identify yourselves," one of our men shouted, his voice cutting through the night. No response. The figures kept coming. Then, one of them stepped into the glow of our headlights. And what I saw still haunts me to this day. The beam from our headlights cut through the thick desert air, illuminating the figure in front of us. My breath caught in my throat. He was wearing a tattered uniform, barely hanging onto his thin frame, covered in dust and grime. His face, what was left of it, looked sunken, hollow, like the war had drained every ounce of life from him. His eyes, dark and glassy, stared ahead without focus, without recognition. And yet, he kept moving toward us, slow but deliberate. My fingers tightened around my rifle. My training told me to act, to issue another warning, to prepare to fire if necessary, but something about this moment felt wrong. It was as if the desert itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Behind the first figure, more of them emerged from the darkness, one by one, their movements eerily similar. Some were missing helmets, others had torn uniforms, but all of them had that same empty stare. They weren't attacking, they weren't running, they were just walking, as if being pulled forward by some invisible force. "Command, we have a situation," my squad leader, Staff Sergeant Martinez, spoke into his radio. His voice steady but tense. "Possible survivors or—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Something else. Requesting guidance." The response was static. I stole a glance at the others. Baker, the youngest in our squad, had his rifle raised but his hands were shaking. Harris, the guy who had been in the army the longest, was muttering under his breath, something about how this wasn't right. Even Corporal Andrews, who never seemed rattled by anything, had gone quiet. The figures kept coming. "Stop!" Martinez barked, stepping forward. "Identify yourselves." Nothing. No reaction. Not even a flinch. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the first figure's head snapped up. His mouth opened slightly, and I swear for a second I thought I heard him whisper something. A faint, broken sound carried by the wind. My stomach twisted. And then he dropped. Just like that. His legs gave out and he collapsed face first into the sand. The others followed, one by one, falling like marionettes with their strings cut. The sound of their bodies hitting the ground was somehow worse than if they had been shot. It was heavy, final. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Martinez exhaled sharply and motioned forward. Check them. I hesitated, but orders were orders. I took a few careful steps, my boots crunching against the dry ground, my heart hammering so hard it felt like my chest might burst. Kneeling beside the first man, I reached out, pressing 2 fingers against the side of his neck. Cold. No pulse. His skin felt wrong. Almost like leather, stiff and brittle. They're dead, Harris muttered, checking another body. All of them. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. That wasn't possible. We had just watched them walking. Moving. How could they be dead? What the hell is going on here? Baker whispered. No one had an answer. We searched the bodies, looking for any sign of who they were, where they had come from. No identification. No weapons. Just faded uniforms that didn't match any unit we knew of. Some were so worn and torn that the patches were unreadable. Others looked like they had been out here for days, maybe weeks. Martinez stood, running a hand over his face. Pack it up. We're moving. I was about to stand when something caught my eye. One of the men on the ground. His hand clenched tight around something. I hesitated, then carefully pried his fingers open. Inside his palm was a small metal tag. Dog tag. My breath hitched as I turned it over, wiping away the grime. The name on it made my blood run cold. It was impossible. I knew that name. We all did. Because the man it belonged to had been reported Kia 3 months ago. I felt my stomach drop. I turned back toward the body, really looking at him now. The sunken features, the pale skin, the hollow stare. But beneath all of that, there was something familiar. I knew this man. And I knew for a fact that he had died. I had seen it with my own eyes. I stared at the name on the dog tag, my fingers tightening around the cold metal. My breath felt shallow. This couldn't be real. I had been there the night this man, Private Daniel Reeves, was killed. I had seen the explosion that tore through his convoy, watched as the flames swallowed everything. There was no way he could be lying here now. His body perfectly intact, looking like he had just walked out of the desert. Baker must have seen my expression because he took a step closer, peering over my shoulder. What is it? I didn't answer right away. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Finally, I turned the tag toward him. The moment he read the name, his face went pale. No, he whispered, shaking his head. That's not possible. Harris, who had been standing nearby, stepped in, his brow furrowed. What's going on? I handed him the tag. He read it, blinked, then read it again. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. This doesn't make sense, he finally muttered. Reeves died months ago. Martinez must have sensed the shift in the air because he marched over. What is it? Harris passed him the tag, and for the first time since I had known him, I saw a flicker of something in Martinez's eyes. Fear. He turned to the body on the ground, his jaw tightening. This is some kind of mistake, he said, but it didn't sound like he believed it. I swallowed hard. It's him, Sarge. No, he snapped. It can't be. But we all knew the truth. The desert didn't play tricks like this. We had found the body of a man who had already died, and we had watched him walk. A thick silence settled over us. The wind had died down, the night stretching wide and empty around us. I could hear my own heartbeat, could feel the weight of something pressing down on my chest, something I couldn't explain. We need to move, Martinez said finally, his voice tight. Now. No one argued. We packed up fast, leaving the bodies where they lay. There was nothing we could do for them. And to be honest, none of us wanted to stay there any longer than we had to. The convoy started rolling again, tires kicking up dust as we moved deeper into the desert. I sat in the back of one of the Humvees, staring down at the dog tag in my hand. I wanted to believe there was a logical explanation for what we had just seen. Maybe it was a case of mistaken identity. Maybe someone had stolen Reeves's tag. Maybe. I stopped myself. I knew better. And the worst part. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. I thought back to the stories I had heard over the past few weeks. Soldiers talking in hushed tones around campfires, sharing rumors about things that didn't add up. Patrols spotting figures in the desert that disappeared when they got too close. Voices on the radio, speaking in garbled whispers, even when no one was on the other end. Tracks in the sand that led nowhere. At the time, I had dismissed it all as stress, exhaustion, the desert playing tricks on tired minds. But now I wasn't so sure. The unease followed us as we drove, settling over the convoy like a heavy blanket. The radio crackled occasionally, but no one spoke. Even Baker, who was usually the first to crack a joke in tense situations, was dead silent. Then, after what felt like hours, the Humvee in front of us skidded to a stop. The sudden jolt nearly threw me forward. "What the hell?" Martinez's voice came through the radio. I leaned out of the vehicle, trying to see what was happening. The headlights ahead illuminated something just off the road, a wrecked vehicle, half buried in the sand. It wasn't unusual to find abandoned wreckage out here. But something about this felt different. We climbed out cautiously, weapons at the ready. The heat still clung to the metal of the vehicle, meaning it hadn't been here long. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle. Just an empty, destroyed transport. Then I noticed the markings on the side. My breath hitched. It was one of ours. Baker swore under his breath. This thing wasn't in the reports. Harris ran a hand over the wreck, his fingers tracing the bullet holes in the metal. "It wasn't here before," he said quietly. I turned, scanning the darkness. The desert stretched out in every direction, silent, unmoving. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, watching us. Martinez gave the order to move, and no one hesitated. We climbed back into our vehicles, engines roaring to life. But as we drove away, I couldn't stop thinking about the bodies in the sand, about the name on the dog tag, about the wreck that appeared out of nowhere. Something was happening out here. And I had the sinking feeling that we were about to find out what. The road stretched ahead of us, dark and endless, the hum of the engine the only sound breaking the silence. No one spoke. The tension sat heavy in the air, thick and unshakable. Every one of us was thinking the same thing. What we saw back there wasn't normal. The bodies, the dog tag, the wreckage that hadn't been there before. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle we didn't understand. I gripped the dog tag in my hand, running my thumb over the engraved name. Private Daniel Reeves. I could still see his face, the way his lifeless body had crumpled in the sand, even after we had just watched him walking toward us. My brain couldn't make sense of it. Maybe it didn't want to. Martinez finally broke the silence, his voice low through the radio. "ETA to checkpoint, 10 minutes. Stay alert." Harris let out a slow breath. Like we could do anything else. The headlights cut through the darkness, the desert landscape blending together in a never-ending sea of sand. I kept scanning the horizon, my grip tightening on my rifle. Every shadow felt wrong. Every movement in the distance made my heart hammer against my ribs. Then the radio crackled. It was faint at first, just a whisper of static. Then came the voice. "Help me." It was barely audible, a weak, broken sound, like whoever was speaking was struggling just to form the words. Baker shifted in his seat, his face pale in the glow of the dashboard lights. "Did you hear that?" I nodded slowly, my throat dry. The voice came again, distorted through the static. "Please, anyone." Martinez grabbed his radio. "Who is this? Identify yourself." Silence. Then the voice returned, stronger this time. "This is Private Daniel Reeves. Request immediate." The signal cut out, replaced by the low hum of static. Cold chill ran down my spine. Baker's hands trembled on his rifle. No, that's not possible. That's not." Harris's knuckles were white as he gripped the dashboard. "Sarge, tell me you're hearing this." Martinez's face was stone, unreadable. But I knew he had heard it. We all had. The voice on the radio was coming from a man we had just found dead in the desert. Then suddenly the headlights flickered. The Humvee's engine sputtered, coughing like it was struggling to keep running. And then the world went dark. The power cut out completely. The dashboard lights, the headlights, the radio. Everything shut off in an instant, plunging us into a silence so deep it made my ears ring. The Humvee slowed to a stop, the tires crunching against the sand. Panic gripped my chest. What the hell just happened? Martinez grabbed his rifle, scanning the darkness. "Check the engine." Baker and Harris jumped out, popping the hood, but I barely heard them. My focus was locked on the desert beyond the windshield. It was too quiet. The wind had stopped. No distant rumbles of artillery, no radio chatter, nothing. Just dead silence. Then, in the distance, something moved. At first it was just a flicker, a shift in the darkness. Then the movement became clearer. Figures emerging from the shadows, walking toward us. My stomach twisted. "Sarge!" Martinez followed my gaze. His jaw clenched. "Everyone back in the vehicle. Now." Baker and Harris slammed the hood shut and scrambled inside. The figures were getting closer. I could see them more clearly now. Dozens of them moving in slow, unnatural steps. And then I saw their faces. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized them. Not just Reeves. Others. Soldiers who had gone missing. Soldiers who were supposed to be dead. They were all here. And they were all coming straight for us. The radio crackled to life again. But this time, the voice wasn't asking for help. It was laughing. The laughter on the radio sent a chill straight through me. It wasn't natural. It wasn't human. It was distorted, warping in and out with a static, as if something was trying to mimic a sound it didn't fully understand. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. No one spoke. No one moved. We just sat there, frozen, listening to that awful hollow sound echo through the Humvee speakers. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the laughter cut off. Silence. Outside, the figures were getting closer. Their movements were slow, almost mechanical, like they were being pulled forward by something unseen. Their faces, God, their faces were blank, their eyes dark and empty, like they weren't really looking at us but through us. I recognized so many of them. Men who had been part of our unit. Men we had mourned. Men who shouldn't be here. Baker was gripping his rifle so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "Sarge," he whispered, his voice shaking. "What the hell do we do?" Martinez didn't answer. He was staring out at the approaching figures, his breathing shallow. I had never seen him look scared before. Not like this. Then one of the figures stopped. Just a few feet from the Humvee. My heart pounded as I recognized him instantly. Lieutenant Graves. He had been my commanding officer in the first few months of deployment before he went missing during a night raid. We all assumed he had been captured or killed, but now he was standing right in front of us. His uniform covered in dust, his face eerily expressionless. And then he spoke. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a script. Every muscle in my body locked up. Martinez gritted his teeth. "Graves." The man tilted his head slightly. His lips parted again, but his mouth didn't move naturally. It was stiff, forced, like he was struggling to remember how to speak. "You need to leave," he said. Baker cursed under his breath. "Oh hell no. This isn't real. This." Then Graves took a step forward. His movements jerky and unnatural. His eyes locked onto mine. "They know you're here," he said. My pulse hammered in my ears. "Who?" I whispered before I could stop myself. The radio crackled again. The same voice came through, but this time it wasn't laughing. It was whispering. "They're watching." A cold dread settled in my gut. And then the Humvee's power suddenly roared back to life. The dashboard lights flickered, the radio hissed with static, and the headlights blasted through the darkness, illuminating the figures fully for the first time. But now, they weren't moving. They were frozen in place, every single one of them standing perfectly still. Like puppets waiting for their strings to be pulled. Martinez didn't hesitate. Drive. Now. Harris slammed his foot on the gas, and the Humvee lurched forward, tires spinning in the sand. I twisted in my seat, watching as the figures remained behind, motionless, their blank faces fading into the distance. The radio crackled one last time. Too late, the voice whispered. And then, nothing. I turned to Martinez. Sarge, what the hell is going on? His face was tight. His hands clenched into fists. For the first time since I had known him, he didn't have an answer. No one did. But whatever this was, it wasn't over. The Humvee roared forward, tires kicking up a cloud of sand behind us. My pulse was still hammering in my ears, my mind struggling to process what we had just seen. The voices on the radio, the figures in the dark, Lieutenant Graves standing there like a ghost pulled from the past. None of it made sense. Martinez was gripping the dashboard so tightly his fingers had turned white. Baker was muttering under his breath, something between a prayer and a curse. Harris kept checking the mirrors, as if expecting those things, whatever they were, to come sprinting after us. But they didn't move. They just stood there, frozen in the beams of our fading headlights, their eyes locked on us. Martinez finally spoke. We don't stop again. No matter what. No one argued. The checkpoint was less than 10 minutes away. We just had to make it. The radio crackled again, and every nerve in my body tensed. But this time it wasn't a voice. It was just static. A low, hissing sound like someone breathing right against the mic. Then, through the noise, I heard something else. A whisper. Not from the radio. From right behind me. Cold fear crawled up my spine. Slowly I turned my head. And my breath caught in my throat. There was someone sitting in the back of the Humvee. A shadowy figure, hunched in the farthest corner, its face hidden in the dim light. My stomach twisted into a knot. I could barely get the words out. Sarge! Martinez followed my gaze, and I saw the moment the color drained from his face. Stop the truck! Harris slammed on the brakes, the Humvee skidding in the sand. The moment we stopped, Martinez and I spun around, weapons raised. But the seat was empty. Nothing. Baker ran a hand over his face, breathing hard. I swear to God I saw. I saw it too, I cut in, my voice hoarse. Harris swallowed hard. What the hell is happening to us? Martinez didn't answer. He just looked at the radio. The static was still hissing softly, like whatever had been speaking to us was still listening. We're leaving, he said. Now. Harris didn't need to be told twice. The Humvee roared forward again, the checkpoint just minutes away. Then, through the windshield we saw it. A set of lights in the distance. Bright floodlights, stationed along a perimeter fence. Checkpoint. Relief washed over me. We made it. Harris gunned the engine, speeding toward the gates. But as we got closer, something felt off. There were no guards, no movement, just an empty checkpoint, abandoned in the middle of the desert. We pulled up to the entrance, the metal gates standing slightly ajar. The only sound was the faint hum of a generator keeping the floodlights on. We climbed out cautiously, weapons at the ready. Martinez led the way, stepping through the gate first. Then I saw them. Scattered across the ground were more dog tags. Dozens of them. Some half buried in the sand, others gleaming under the lights. I bent down, picking one up. My blood ran cold. Private Daniel Reeves. My fingers tightened around it. I turned and looked at the others, each one marked with a name I knew. Soldiers from our unit. Soldiers we had lost. Soldiers who were supposed to be dead. And then the lights flickered. A low hum filled the air, deep and unnatural, like the desert itself was breathing. My skin prickled. The radio in the Humvee suddenly blared to life, louder than before. The static was gone. And in its place, a single voice. They know. My chest tightened. Martinez was already backing toward the truck. "We're leaving. Now." But then, the checkpoint lights shut off completely. Everything went black. I heard Baker curse. Harris fumbled for his flashlight, but before he could turn it on, I heard something else. A step. Not just one set. Dozens. They were coming from all around us. My heart pounded as I raised my rifle, scanning the darkness. I could barely see, but I could feel them. The weight of unseen eyes pressing down on us. Then the floodlights suddenly flickered back to life. And they were there, standing in the checkpoint surrounding us. The same figures from the desert. Graves, Reeves, every soldier we had lost. Their faces empty, their bodies stiff, like marionettes waiting for someone to pull the strings. Martinez lifted his rifle. "Stand down." No response. They just stood there. Then one by one they started whispering. Their voices overlapping, a chorus of words that made no sense. A low hum of something ancient, something wrong. I felt a sharp pain in my head. My vision blurred. It was like they were inside my skull, pressing against my thoughts, pushing something into my mind that I couldn't fight. Then one voice cut through the noise. A voice I knew. My own. "None of this is real." The words stopped me cold. I turned, looking at the others, but they hadn't heard it. Only I had. Then everything shifted. The figures flickered like static on an old TV. The ground beneath my feet wavered. The checkpoint blurred at the edges, like the world itself was unraveling. And in that moment I knew. This wasn't real. None of it was. I stumbled back, gripping my head. My memories twisted and rewound, pieces falling into place. The desert. Voices. The endless road that never seemed to lead anywhere. We had never left. We had never made it out. Martinez grabbed my arm. "Move!" and blinked. The figures were closing in. The radio was screaming with static. The ground trembled beneath us. And then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in the sand, staring up at the stars. The wind was gone. The checkpoint was gone. The Humvee was gone. And so was my team. I sat up, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The desert stretched out around me, endless and empty. My rifle was gone. My radio was silent. Then I saw it. A single dog tag, half buried in the sand in front of me. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It had my name on it. And in that moment I understood. I had never left the desert. And I never would. I stared at the dog tag in my hand, the name stamped into the metal sending a cold shiver through my body. Name. My blood felt like ice in my veins. The wind had died completely. The desert was unnervingly still, as if the world itself had stopped moving. The checkpoint was gone. The Humvee was gone. My team was gone. I scrambled to my feet, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Martinez. Baker. My own voice felt small against the endless emptiness. There was no answer. Only silence. The weight of it pressed down on me, a crushing, suffocating feeling that made my chest tighten. I turned in circles, trying to spot anything, any sign that I hadn't just been abandoned in this endless void. But there was nothing. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. I was alone. I looked back down at the dog tag, turning it over in my shaking hands. My name was there, but something else had been scratched into the metal. A single word, barely legible beneath the scarring. Stay. A deep sense of unease settled over me. My mind screamed for an explanation, but nothing made sense. Was I dead? Had I been dead this whole time? No, I could feel the sand beneath my boots, the dry air filling my lungs. But if this was real, where was everyone? I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to force the memories to line up, to make sense of what had happened. The figures in the desert. The checkpoint that disappeared. The voices whispering things I wasn't supposed to hear. And then the moment where everything unraveled, like reality itself had torn apart at the seams. I opened my eyes again, but something had changed. The sky. The stars above weren't right. They weren't in the same positions I had known my whole life. Some shined too bright, others barely flickered at all. It was as if I was looking up at a sky that belonged to somewhere else. Something deep in my gut twisted. Then I heard it. A step. Soft, slow footsteps in the sand behind me. My breath caught in my throat. Every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't want to turn around. But I had to. Turn. And there he was. Lieutenant Graves stood a few feet away. His face calm. His uniform untouched by the dust and blood of war. His expression wasn't blank this time. It was understanding. As if he had been waiting for me to reach this moment. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. He took a step closer. You get it now, don't you? I swallowed hard. Get what? He tilted his head slightly, watching me the way a teacher watches a student about to figure out the answer for themselves. This place. It's not what you thought it was. The weight in my chest grew heavier. What happened to my team? They left, he said simply. Because they could. I shook my head. That doesn't make sense. Where did they go? Where am I? Graves sighed, glancing up at the strange sky above us. Some places aren't meant to be understood. Some doors only open for those who are ready to leave. I clenched my fists. What does that mean? Just tell me the truth. His gaze met mine, steady and unblinking. You've been here longer than you realize. My pulse pounded in my ears. No, that's not true. We were just on patrol. We saw you. I stopped, the words catching in my throat. I had seen him. But had any of it been real? Had the checkpoint ever been there? Had the Humvee ever really moved? Had I ever really left this place? A memory surfaced, unbidden. Flash of heat. The distant sound of an explosion. My own voice shouting. Bright searing pain. And then, nothing. Graves' voice was quiet but firm. Some of us never made it out. The air around me felt heavier. Thick like a storm was pressing down on me. My knees felt weak. No, I muttered, shaking my head. No, I'm not dead. I can't be. Graves didn't argue. He just waited, letting the truth settle in on its own. And deep down I knew. I had never left this desert. Not really. My team had moved on. Maybe in ways I couldn't understand, maybe back to the real world, maybe to somewhere else entirely. But I had stayed. I had been walking the same endless stretch of sand, trapped in the same loop, seeing ghosts of the past that weren't ghosts at all. Because I was one of them. My throat tightened. Why? I whispered. Why am I still here? Graves studied me for a long moment. Only you can answer that. I looked down at the dog tag still clutched in my fist. Stay. The word burned into my mind. I had been holding on to something. Fear. Guilt. Something unfinished. Whatever it was, it had kept me here, looping through a war that had long since ended, searching for something I didn't even understand. But maybe it was time to stop searching. I took a slow, deep breath, closing my eyes. And I let go. The wind picked up. The sand beneath my feet shifted. When I opened my eyes again, Graves was gone. The desert around me had changed. It wasn't dark anymore. The sky was clearer, the stars softer. The weight in my chest was gone. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt light. I took a step forward. And then another. And as I walked, the desert slowly faded away.